January 3rd, 2020. My name is Lori Kurtz. Would you please introduce yourself, tell us your pronouns if you care to, and tell us what you do?
My name is Christopher Stewart. On stage I'm known as Zora Phoenix, a gender illusionist in the Portland, Oregon area, and also known as Sean Nanigans, a burlesque performer. I've been producing burlesque for 11 years. Producing burlesque, performing burlesque and striptease, as well as being part of the burlesque and performing arts community in Portland and beyond for 22 years.
What is burlesque?
Burlesque is the interesting intersection between striptease, live theater, and the collaboration of community engagement with the stage. I always say that stripping is a destination and burlesque is a journey because we are under the same umbrella. We are sisterhood as we are with belly dance and many other forms of art, in that when you say dance, you can mean jazz or tap or ballet. When you say stage performance, you can be burlesque, belly dance, and other. Burlesque is the culmination, I think, of taking away the fourth wall, combining stage theater with body positive movement. And it incorporates a lot. There's the glittering sequins, feathers, and rhinestones. But at its core, we are an exotic art form that brings the audience into the stage performance.
Yeah. What kind of burlesque do you do?
I am primarily a producer. I've produced in Portland since July 2009, so I'm about to hit my 11th or 12th year, give or take. And as a producer, I primarily provide a safe and creative space for lots of different styles of burlesque. One of the spiels that I do on stage is there are as many different types of burlesque as there are burlesque performers, which is one of the reasons that I love the art form so much. Burlesque encompasses classic burlesque, Neo-Burlesque, and under Neo-Burlesque are so many different subdivisions, including Nerdlesque and Clownlesque and Metalesque and David Lynch-lesque and Rocky Horror Burlesque, so many different other versions. So my role in the community has primarily been a curator of spaces for people to bring their art to the stage. As a burlesque performer or as a drag performer, I tend to be pretty clearly divided between very classic performance and very campy, parody-driven, satirical pieces. On my burlesque side, I have some classic 1950s and 1960s songs, some Ruth Brown and some Nina Simone, and then I have I have a creepy clown act, and then I have a disco inferno act where I come out with a handlebar mustache and my outfit's on fire, so I must take it off so I won't. So my style tends to pick and part and parcel from some of the best performers and performances that I've been honored to bring to the stage and finding inspiration from those.
Where were you born and where did you grow up?
It was a Tuesday. No, actually it was a Friday. I'm originally from Kentucky. I was born and raised just south of Louisville, Kentucky in Bardstown, where my old Kentucky home is. For people who don't get that, that's also where Heaven Hill, Jim Beam, and Maker's Mark are all distilled, so that's where most people know that. I was born in Louisville, then we moved to rural Kentucky until I was in late middle school, and then shortly after I graduated, my mother and I moved to Louisville, which is where I stayed until the age of 25, and then I spent about 3.5 years just south of LA in Orange County in Long Beach, California. And then in May of 2007, I moved to Portland and thought I'd be here for 6 months, and here we are coming up on 13 years later.
And what brought you to Oregon?
I moved with a partner. An old relationships 15 years ago. And with it came an interesting culture shock of entirely new experiences and new people. Coming from rural Kentucky, which is obviously very different. I was also involved in a hate crime. I was gay bashed in Louisville, and so that sort of solidified my decision to move out of state. But moving to Southern California really opened my eyes to other cultures and other art. And then moving to Portland, just sort of an epicenter of a lot of different cultures and art, brought me to the person that I am today.
So what did you do in your formative years that led you to performance?
So, I was a professional square dancer for 12 years, a professional clogger for 15 years, and I taught country western line dance for 5.5 years. My first technical performance was at the age of 8, where I cringily now sang Don't Close Your Eyes by Keith Whitley as a square dance caller. So at 8 years old, I was singing about infidelity and love and having no idea what it was. And then from clogging and square dancing, I moved into marching band in high school, where I was in the color guard, so I was on the flag corps. And I did that for 4 years. Once I graduated, I taught high school marching band, color guard for a couple of years, kept doing line dancing until I got to Southern California, and then that's when the interesting cross section of moving my body with the dance and then moving a flag sort of came together, and that's where I found drag. And so from drag performance, I initially started singing. This is how I started out doing drag, which is a primary portion of my performance now, is that I'm primarily a live singer. And that's that line of movement to singing to movement to drag to performance sort of led me to where I am now.
Oh my gosh. Who was an inspiration to you? Who did you look to and think, I want to do that, or I want to be like that? Was there anyone?
That's an interesting question, in that I have, and for no specific reason, I've never found myself wanting or needing to compare myself to anyone else. So I've never felt that I needed to have an idol. I've definitely had a lot of respect for a lot of performers, specifically ones who came from either a place of underprivilege to find their art and have it make their success, which I think is an incredibly powerful thing. And that journey is very empowering and inspirational to me. But I've not really had an idol, or I've more or less created my character, my persona, and my art from within, with nods to other performers.
Yeah. What, if any, formal education or training have you had?
Not a one. I say luck. I believe luck is a residue of design. By luck, I have lucked into pretty much every major life change or job that I've ever had, which I believe is very clearly because I remember at a very young age hearing, be careful who you step on the way up to the ladder, because you never know who you're going to pass on the way down. So I've always believed, first and foremost, think about what you say. Is it helpful? Is it inspirational? Is it necessary? Is it kind? So using that in professional and personal settings have allowed me to really curate the space that I have, as opposed to trying to emulate what I see other successes be.
Yeah. So this is a study about burlesque in Oregon, but I don't want you to hesitate to mention the other performing and other things that you do. When did you start doing what you might consider burlesque?
When I first moved to Portland and was doing drag, the best way to get into the community was to do MC positions for nonprofit organizations, which is where I sort of established my foothold. In September of 2008, I was reached out to MC a nonprofit fundraising performing arts showcase called Boobs, Best of Our Burlesque Show. At the time, I was like, the wage sounds great. I don't know what burlesque is, but I'll talk about it on stage with passion. I did not know at the time that I was among some burlesque royalty. In the show were Indigo Blue, I had a handful, Inga Ingenue, the Rubenesque girls from Oakland, just some amazing performers who at the time I didn't know, of course, many of whom I still know and communicate with. I was rather taken with the art and the I don't think that anyone, including femme-identified folk, need to be empowered because they have the power, but I saw the empowerment in that they gave themselves by stepping on stage, and was really taken with the way that the audience reacted. It was very different than a lot of other performing arts, where being on stage doesn't have to be performative. Being performative can be part of being on stage, and that's what I found as part of burlesque. So in September 2008, I emceed that show. A few months later, I also was asked by another local person. They were coordinating a touring show, burlesque, that was stopping in Portland. I volunteered to work the door. The other person that worked the door with me said, "Hey, I've heard of you. I'm thinking about starting a monthly show. I'm looking for an MC." So 2 months after that, in December of 2008, I started emceeing a burlesque show. After 4 or 5 months, the producer decided they were more of a performer than a producer and asked if I would be interested in taking over production of the show. I agreed, and 2 months later, it was rebranded as the Phoenix Variety Review, which started at Kelly's Olympian in July of 2009, which was a rebranding and reuse of a previous label. I had started the Phoenix Variety Review in 2005 at a bar in Long Beach, California, which was a drag and live singing variety review that included belly dance. So it's interesting that it kind of moved over. Mm-hmm. So I started that show in July of 2009. That show ran for 6.5 years. It sunset in December of 2014. In that time frame, I also launched the show Burlesque See Me Play in March of 2010, which will be celebrating its 10-year anniversary in a couple of months. And then a year after that, I started Burlesque, which was meant to be boylesque and burlesque wrapped in a taste of tease, so that we were focusing on a variety of burlesque performances. And then over the course of the last 10 years, there have been Control Tease, which was a nerdlesque show. There's been the Starlet Showcase, Improvlesque, which the performers spin a wheel and they have 5 minutes to figure out what they're going to perform. I did 2 seasonal runs of an event called the Pasty Pageant, which was a 10-week performance challenge experiment where the performers had 1 week to create an act that they would bring the following week, drawn from a random deck of cards of 3 different things: the music, the style, and the accessory. So 1 week it might be disco chair and fans, or country gloves and stocking peels. So over the course of the time, I have tried to take what the community isn't asking for but seems to need, try to anticipate the needs so that I can help grow performance, challenge performers, and get to where we are from where we've been in a way that makes sense.
What are all just take me through a week in the life of the entrepreneurial creative artist that you are?
Whew.
All the jobs, all the skills, all
of the things.
Considerations.
Well, in addition to burlesque, I also work full-time managing the event space of a local bar. So I'm the events coordinator and promotions manager. I am in a very unique position in the community in that I work at the bar in which I produce my shows, and I manage the calendar at the bar in which I produce my shows. I am also in a unique position in that I produce and perform in shows, and also am the executive director of the Rose City School of Burlesque. So I teach people how to do burlesque, I put them on stage, I perform with them, and I run in friend circles with them. So I work for a bar, I produce 2 monthly burlesque shows with several ad hoc and quarterly productions. I am the executive director of the Rose City School of Burlesque. I teach 70% of the classes. It's a 10-week semester, and I teach 7 of those 10 classes. I also run a small business consulting and graphic design company, primarily focused on micro businesses or businesses of one. So for artisans or performers, I teach them how to take their hobby and turn it into a business, because most people who have passion for something don't know how to profit from it. So I work with quite a few performers, either working with their websites. I manage several performers' Facebook pages and help them with promotional information. I also run a monthly clothing optional dance party called Pants Up Dance Off. And then I do quarterly queer-focused benefits dance parties where a portion of the proceeds go to support a local nonprofit. So I have my hand in lots of different things. However, a typical week for me is dividing my time between various foci, whether it be external, internal, meaning someone's hired me to do it, something that I have created, or the maintenance of ongoing shows. So I'm maintaining ticket sales for my 2 monthly shows. I am working out scheduling conflicts with upcoming performances and making sure that we get a good variety of performers, performances, and performance styles in my shows. So I'm very keen on making sure that I have all bodies, all types, all styles in my shows over the course of time. So a typical week is anything atypical compared to what it was 15 years ago. My background, I spent about 22 years in corporate marketing. Started with Papa John's, went to Meijer, M-E-I-J-E-R, from Midwest, where I was in network admin. From there, I was the assistant director of marketing of Hooters corporate office. And from there, I was the director of marketing for Coldwell Banker in Southern California. And from there, I worked for PGE and UPS. And then for the last 6 years of my corporate career, I was a digital media analyst for Kroger. I helped launch their social media platform. I took raw data and turned it into charts and information that digital media buyers could understand the benefit of their cost. So my background is very different than what I do now, because I primarily make my own schedule and work for myself, as it were, which is a challenge all on its own. But finding the ways to take my week and break it into pieces that make sense for creative, but also realizing that I need to crunch numbers and do accounting and financial background. It's an interesting week.
How did you learn to do all that?
Again, it's a lot of interesting luck, as it were. I have found my ways into positions by being a person of worth to people. I'm often referred to as Siri or Google by a lot of my friends because I either know the answer or I know how to find it quickly. And I think by being willing to find an answer, being willing to say I don't know, but I will find out, kind of beholden to a lot of folk that this is a person that I will trust that I don't know, but that I'll let them know that I don't know. And I think through that, setting your personality up as one who is willing to find what someone needs has helped me in a position to learn things that I didn't expect to be put into a position to have to learn. I didn't know anything about real estate when I started there. I didn't know anything about corporate marketing when I started working for Hooters. I knew a little bit about, I've been a nerd for 35 years, but I knew a little bit about computers when I found myself in the network admin, managing several stores and their entire computer systems. So it's been an interesting scope of not fake it until you make it, but try it before you buy it, as it were. And so offering to, hey, let me see if I can figure that out for you. Oh, Chris knows how to do that. So and then finding your way into those positions. I knew so little about, when people say performing arts, they often think very specifically stage theater, and I was familiar with, but did not know a ton about, knew nothing about producing shows before I started doing it, knew nothing about emceeing before I started doing it. But I think that being able to dissect the reason that you can do X and finding out how to apply it to Y and Z is part of a malleable personality that provides you with professional success. So I've really said, well, I don't know how to bake a pie, but I know how to make cookies. I'm able to dissect those things. And I think that's really what's kind of led me to the position where I've found success in either doing it with panache so that you can make it happen, or finding a way to learn from other people who've already set the standard.
Yeah. So a stereotype of burlesque is that there are male producers and put upon, victimized female performers, old stereotype. What's the burlesque community like in Portland?
Well, I mean, from an outside perspective, one could say that seems very much as what it is. Myself and the Mad Marquis are two male-identified producers who, in the scope of burlesque, do not perform burlesque, but produce it for a primarily femme-identified burlesque community. I very clearly chose to make my burlesque MC persona a gender illusionist or a drag performer for the primary reason of it not being another dude on stage announcing women, for many reasons I have issues in the way that it can be done. And from my understanding, there aren't enough, although that number is growing, aren't enough femme-identified MCs or producers. Fortunately, that's changed over the last 10 years, give or take, quite a bit. But there's a lot of stereotypes because art imitates life in a lot of ways, and because the patriarchy is so in-depth part of so many things, whether it be from marketing or corporate world or even theater. I think without meaning to, we often find ourselves imitating what we see, whether it be right or wrong, and not realizing or dissecting the reason behind it. Fortunately, while the producer has the power, so to speak, of who gets on stage, that is like the realtor selling the house and the person who buying the house making it what's theirs. The performers make what they believe they need to put on stage and what they believe needs to be seen. And so there's some power, as a white cis male who appears white and female on stage, it's easy for me to say it from that perspective, but I truly feel like the power is in the performer's hands. Making a statement on stage happens because you chose to bring a statement to the stage. Granted, there is the key holder, or the gatekeeper of the producer in the area that kind of stands in between. What has been interesting in the community, specifically in the last 5 years or so, is how many people, regardless of what was being put on stage, if they didn't see it, they were creating their own. So we've had an explosion of different styles of shows, different art, and people finding their own path without needing to adhere to whatever structure has been set for them. So while there is some truth to the stereotype in that it exists, I don't think overall that it has permeated the entire community. Overall, at least in Portland specifically, it is overwhelmingly femme-identified producers and MCs, which is wonderful and really how it should be. It's also easy to pull the wool over your own eyes and assume that you're doing great by everyone. I've made mistakes in the past where I thought I was doing the right thing and not realizing that by doing what I think was the right thing, I was either being ableist or excluding other folks, and it takes people letting you know that you made a mistake before you can learn. So I think there's still some truth to that stereotype, and I think there will always be some truth to it from someone's perspective. Someone's always going to see that.
How did you come to be the head of the School of Burlesque?
Oh, that story.
Well, in 2010, Holiday founded the Oregon Burlesque Festival. That's a different story that we'll talk about later. Founded the Rose City School of Burlesque. I was brought on to teach comedy and drama. So there were 3 or 4 instructors at the time. So I taught a couple of classes as the comedy and drama instructor, and then I took over some of the admin for the school. And then Holly had some life changes and had a new job and a lot of things going on, and asked if I would be interested in taking over the school. So I took over the school in June of 2012 as the executive director, changed the curriculum a little bit, changed up the staffing just a little bit, and we've more or less maintained a similar curriculum and philosophy since. Our staff has changed over the years due to scheduling and many other things. But I basically went from, hey, you're funny on stage, do you want to teach funny in class, to, hey, do you want to help us teach people, to, hey, do you want to help run the school? And I have always run the school as a very Neo-Burlesque focused. I tell the students that I will never tell you no until your idea is identical to someone else's, so that we can protect their intellectual property, that you're not cloning what they're doing. While imitation is the most sincerest form of flattery, it's also still imitation and can also be reworded to plagiarism, so we have to be careful. Holly went on to start the Old Burlesque Academy, which was originally focused on classic burlesque, so we had 2 different styles of burlesque that were being taught. For example, for the group routine for the Rose City School of Burlesque, it's always a top 40 pop song that incorporates burlesque and striptease into movement-based curriculum. So that kind of changes the focus of the performance, and that helps the students. I never thought I would find myself in a role that others have deemed life-changing and pivotal to their life journey. But it took several years of teaching before I realized that what I and my faculty are doing is teaching people how to find themselves without the structure of societal influence, which is an incredible, it's number one, it's an incredible power to hold. It's also an incredibly humbling position to be in, to watch people's lives change over the course of 10 weeks, watch them completely rewrite their self-identified DNA over that course of time. It's a really fascinating experience.
Some people might be perplexed thinking the School of Burlesque has a teaching philosophy. Could you talk about that? And then could you talk about Neo-Burlesque versus classic?
Certainly. The Rose City School of Burlesque, our tagline is the Portland's first and foremost school for the art form of burlesque. And I feel like it's important to talk about the art form. Our philosophy has several points. Number one, our intention is never to be a performer factory. My intention is not to put people on stage for the intention of them returning to the stage. I want them to have the opportunity of being on stage, and I would say not quite 50-50, maybe like 60-40. A lot of our people have had some form of performative background. They've taken jazz class, or they were swing dancers, or they were theater nerds, some version of that, and they wanted to figure out a way to find something within themselves and their background. Because our intention is not a performer factory, I teach people how to not apologize for taking up space in the world, how to learn that it's okay to be who they are and not who someone else deems them to be, and how to recognize that the space they take up is valuable in the world. Those are my main tenets in teaching burlesque. And to teach them that I'm a firm believer, for example, karaoke. Oh, I hate karaoke. Why? I can't sing. Well, everyone can sing, some just better than others. And I think that philosophy also applies to burlesque and to movement. Well, I'm not a dancer. Well, if you move your body and it's while music's playing, you're dancing. It doesn't have to be on beats because there's syncopation, there's so many different ways of movement. So I teach people how to sort of break down whatever historical influences tell them they can't, they aren't, they shouldn't, and they're not enough, and find ways for them to identify with the fact that I can't find first position to third position in ballet, but I can do an 8-count grapevine, or I don't know how to move my feet, but I can find movement with my arms. So I think the philosophy includes letting people find within themselves the power that they need. And that also applies very much to the difference between Neo-Burlesque and classic burlesque, in that classic burlesque is very much in an allegory. It's very ballet, whereas we are very modern movements. A lot of classic burlesque is focused on the lines, the arcs, and the flowing movement. Neo-Burlesque is more focused on not so much what you're doing, but how you're doing and what statement it makes. So two very strong statements in styles of burlesque. The approach is very different. Often with classic burlesque, it's find the song and the rhythm and figure out the best way to apply movement to it. And often with Neo-Burlesque, it's find the statement, find the song that goes with it, and then create the costume and movement around that. Those are the main differences. Also with classic burlesque, it's find a song that has been recorded, find a version that you like of it, and with Neo-Burlesque, it's find a statement, then figure out what song from all genres, all eras. With the Rose City School of Burlesque, we've had students do everything from Nina Simone to 9 Inch Nails, from Jay-Z to Rammstein, a little bit of everything from classical music to straight rap. And I feel like there is incredible value in finding your body's movement style in a song that means something to you, as opposed to molding yourself to a song that's out there.
Yeah. And so who's typically drawn to the burlesque world in terms of your audience? You're a producer of so many things. Who comes to see that?
It's changed quite a bit over the last decade. And I think when I started in burlesque, there were 2 burlesque producers and there were 6 or 7 performers. So it was a very small community, many of whom have either retired or moved away or moved on. And then our first job wasn't promotion, it was education. Being the city with the most strip clubs per capita in the world, we had to educate people the difference between stripping and burlesque. In that stripping and striptease are 2 sides of the same coin, but they're very, and the thing about a coin is you can only look at one side at a time. And so we had to educate people. So then it was often people who thought they were getting something different, who thought it was a stage version of a strip club. And in some performances, that's accurate, but not all shows are necessarily derivative of that strip club experience. So when it started, we were getting a very different demographic than we are now. I would say overall, our audiences tend to be in the 25 to 35, sort of older millennial, hip with performance group, and quite a few of our audience is in the 40 to 65, even 70-ish range, who remember that burlesque has been around for a while, that it just took a little nap for a bit, and are curious to see what it has brought to the current zeitgeist, as it were. It's also fascinating to me. I feel like people connect to burlesque in kind of one of 3 ways. It's either in the physical, in that I find this person attractive and I like the way that they're moving. It's in the mental, in that I I see something that looks like me on stage and I wish I could move like that. Or it's in the soul in that I want to be able to do that. I wonder if that's a thing that I could do. And because those three triad points resonate differently in different audiences, our audience tends to be wildly different. I have the good fortune to have had a long running monthly show. So I'm SEO'd all the way up in that I don't have to do a ton of promotion for my shows. So it's always fascinating to me at the beginning of the show. One of the first things I ask is how many people have never been to a burlesque show before? And often it's 40 to 60+% of the audience. Every show. And that's 132 shows or whatever in now. And that's for just one show. And they're both usually like that. So it's interesting for me to see the demographics, and also because I'm incredibly nerdy, I look at all the back-end data. I look to see who are return people, how often certain credit cards are used. And that shows me, they buy a ticket every 2 months or three times a year, so our demographics has definitely changed, but it seems to be less of us having to educate people and more as burlesque has grown and become part of the performing arts community at large in Portland. It's more people looking for an escape from reality that provides them with a connection. In that it's easy to go and sit for 2.5 hours and watch a movie at the movie theater, but there's no connection except within yourself. While when you're watching a burlesque show, you can either connect with, I see something on stage that looks like me, that's fascinating, I can move like that, I wonder if I could do that. You can have the escapism of watching an incredibly beautiful, talented person on stage and doing movement that takes you away from what's going on in your life. Taking them on a little bit of a vacation through visual arts. Or it's people who are already supporters of burlesque and are there to see their favorite people, which is lovely. That is a growing number of our demographic. I have some people who come to every one of my shows. I have some people who come to every show that Asteria Adam Bond's in. I have people who come to every single show that Century Adore is in, every single show that Angelique DeVille's in, because they are fans of that performer. So that demographic changes based on who, how, and what.
So shifting to more artistic aspects for you, your process for creating a new piece of performance, what is your process for creating a new piece of burlesque?
For me, more times than not, I find inspiration from hearing a song and having a flash of, oh, that would be amazing to do this act to that song. Or falling in love with the fluid movement of instruments in a song and wondering how I can apply that to my body or to movement on stage. That's part of the time. The other part of the time is I'm often sort of commissioned. Hey, I'm doing a show based off of this. I'd love for you to be part of it. Could you create a thing? Which I am incredibly flattered and honored to have been able to do that. Lacey Nickers, who is not only one of my burlesque children, but also an amazing producer in her own right, asked me to be part of her disco show. And said, I'd really love it if you would consider doing something very classic disco. So I thought, well, I've always loved the song Disco Inferno, so why not create an act around that? So then, okay, how am I going to do that? And I thought, well, over the years, I've grown into my skin, and I like how I look, and I'm proud of it, and I have no shame within it. But I don't think I'm classically or typically sexy. So my version of sexy is making you fall in love with how silly I can be on stage, while adding elements of sexuality and sensuality to it. So sometimes it's, how can I take, okay, I'm gonna have, my underwear's gonna be on fire, and I've got a song, how do I make that a sensual, sexy movement on stage that will make sense for the audience to go on that journey? Because I truly think that every act is a journey that the audience has given you the gift of their 5 minutes of time. How do you make the most of that time? So for me, it's often finding a song. Sometimes it's having the structure, the pressure, as it were, to adhere to a theme. I was booked for a show called Eat It and it was a benefit for a food pantry in Southern Oregon. And she said, I've got all these things covered. Can you do something about chicken? Okay. So I found a Louis Armstrong said chicken ain't nothing but a bird. I thought, well, how do I make that together? I said, well, I want to be. It's a classy song. It's silly, but it's a classy song. I want to be silly and classy. So I thought, well, how do I make it sexy, silly, and classy? So I created a striptease act where I have a classic black and silver gown on that's oversized, very 1950s, 60s style. Turns out under it I have a chicken onesie. So I pass out chicken tenders to the audience on the way up to the stage, and then suddenly I strip out of that. So finding elements of sexuality, sensuality, ways to make people fall in love with the unexpected, for me, are the most compelling ways to create an act. And those are for some of my more silly acts. Sometimes it's, I want to create this style of movement on stage to challenge myself. I have an act to The Man with the Golden Arm, which is a title no one would recognize, but if you I thought I really love the way that beat goes. How do I find a way to make my body move in a way that challenges myself? And also, how am I going to strip out of a white tux and have it be sexy? So adding those elements in. So often for me, it's finding the inspiration of a certain piece of the act and then developing it past that. And I teach my students much in the same way. Find your inspiration in music, costume, or concept, and then grow with the other two around that inspiration.
Because you perform with different personas, how do you decide who gets this fabulous idea?
That is a challenge for sure. The easy way is that if it includes a considerable amount of striptease, it's much easier to do as a burlesque performer, because the amount of illusion that I do to become a drag persona often limits the amount of striptease that I can do. I also generally leave the singing to Zora and the striptease to Sean, so that I've got different elements of the character. There's a little bit of both that has a bit of a Venn diagram overlap, but primarily most of my singing is done in drag. I say that, but I have several acts as Sean Nanigans where I sing and strip. It all depends on the scope, but it is sometimes a. Do I do it? Is this Zora or should I get naked and do it? And it sometimes becomes a struggle. And there are a couple songs that I flip back and forth between the two characters based off of whoever's feeling it at that time.
There's a good deal of discussion these days on the topic of cultural appropriation. You're a teacher at the School of Burlesque. How do you discuss this topic with your students?
I encourage people to stop and ask themselves why they feel inspired by this piece of music, by this piece of art, or by this performance that they've seen before. And then also, much in the same way that we talked about determining why you're doing something and making sure you're imitating, not plagiarizing, not cloning. And when you do decide to take a piece of music, a piece of art, a piece of costume, and use it in your act, ask yourself, if you saw someone who doesn't look like you do the same thing, would it look unique to you? Would it look interesting to you? Or would it seem off-putting to you? So kind of putting it through that lens of, you decided that you want to do, to incorporate belly dance in your act. And you decided that you want to include a very specific style of scarf in your act. And then how do you determine whether or not what you're doing is appropriating not only a culture but also another art form? How do you put those pieces in? So I encourage the students to really look at what they're doing. Because I have an overarching philosophy of never saying no, so to speak, I will often say, does it make sense for someone who looks like you to do something that someone who doesn't like you is already doing? is there a need for you to do it again? And try to offer them that perspective. And I've had some interesting paths. I had a student who did a beautiful fan dance to a sort of hardcore-ish hip-hop song, where she was white, the artist was black, and the performance that she did was not derivative of the style. So it just happened to be the song that had a lyric in it that spoke to the movement that she was doing. And after that graduation, I had an audience member say, how do you talk to your students about using music and using art? All of my instructors are white. I am white. We have lots of people of color who come through the school. So finding a way to incorporate those conversations has been a challenge, but it is one that we have welcomed so that we can continue having the conversation with our students around making sure they take the time to look at what they're doing and determine why they're doing it. Why do you feel inspired, and why do you feel the need to do it? But it's been a cultural touch point for quite some time.
Yeah. And so that leads us into diversity in general here in Portland.
Or the lack thereof.
Yes. How do you, or do you, promote, how do you deal with the need for diversity and promoting diversity, if you do?
There is such a careful tightrope to walk between supporting diversity and tokenization. So I've heard of people in the past saying, well, I make sure I always have one person of color on every show. And I understand as perhaps less than educated or less than familiar person thinking that is checking off the box, but the whole point is that there's still a box, which means there's four walls that you're putting someone in or out of. You're still finding a way to other people. I feel fortunate that over the course of my history, I have had enough people who would want to work with me, who reach out and seek a spot in my shows, that I don't normally have to consider the makeup of my show, but I do. And I try to make it a point to at least take a census of what's happened in the last 3 months and how is it looking. Am I getting all tall, blonde, thin girls? Am I getting, am I seeming to put the same kind of performers on stage? I've been very fortunate that because I'm a white cis dude dressing up as a girl on stage and producing burlesque, that people feel more comfortable coming to me that might not feel as comfortable in a lineup of another show or might not ask for a position in another show. So I take, as unfortunate as the statement is, I take a passive approach in that I watch what's happening and ensure that it doesn't veer in a direction that seems like either tokenization or just seems like whitewashing everything. I often focus on the people with whom I have the connection that want to work with me, and that seems to help me the best. On the flip side of that is that I work very hard in my classes to ensure I teach the makeup class, for example, and when I have a person of color come through, we have very specific conversations about the way I'm teaching to do this. This is how it would work for your skin tone. This is how it would work on stage, and this is why I'm teaching you, but this might be different for you. And making sure that also that anyone which fortunately, the majority of folks who take my class are an othered group. They're either non-binary, they are queer, they are people of color. For whatever reason, the makeup of most of my classes tends to be people who are a part of an othered group, which I really appreciate. So I give them extra attention in that, like, hey, if this is something you want to continue to do, here's some great ways, here's some resources. I refer them to one of the two other schools. I talk to them about different dance classes and opportunities, because I think those things are incredibly important to provide that information, because quite honestly, white cis folk have all the resources out there and I don't have to help them. And I just don't think that they need additional extra help. If somebody is incredibly talented, excited, and well-rounded out, I will give them a direction, but I will give additional resources to anyone who has ever felt any sort of systemic or societal pushback. Because I think that's my role as a white cis dude. Or should be all white cis dudes' roles. But that's a topic for a different oral history.
So people talk about burlesque, how it can be a force for social change. What are your thoughts about that?
I absolutely think that's an accurate statement, in that there's an incredible amount of power to having society's eye literally on your body as you're performing, but making a political statement. Loving yourself is inherently an act of rebellion. So I feel that you're creating a political statement just by nature of getting on stage. The best part about having the opportunity to make a change is you can do it just by getting on stage and not looking like a model, not looking like you were photoshopped, not looking like you were created, usually by a white cis dude in a basement on a computer figuring out. That alone creates the opportunity for other thoughts in people's minds, like, oh, I can look like that and get on, because that person looks like me, I can get on stage. I think burlesque is also a very powerful statement to make, in that bringing burlesque and striptease to the stage almost most of the time includes a statement about current political climate, socioeconomic climate, either in the act or in the show. There are some amazing theme shows between here in Seattle that have focused on Planned Parenthood. I was proud and honored to co-produce a show called Pre-Existing Conditions, which was every performer brought their pre-existing condition to the stage and created an act around talking about invisible illness, whether it be lupus or HIV or cancer or many of the other things. I think it's almost like putting honey in the cough syrup so the kid will eat it, like by saying, hey, I'm going to get naked on stage and do a sexy dance for you. Also, have we talked about how thousands of Native Americans have been killed to do that? Because you got their attention, so why not use that for good? And there's a lot of really phenomenal burlesque, because the story that burlesque, I always tell my students, you should tell a story on stage. That story can be, I want to feel sexy, I want to be covered in glitter, I like this song. I want to bring people's attention to the fact that there have been two-spirited and non-binary folks for thousands of years, and these are all stories that you can tell on stage. So by having the strength and power to create an act and bring it to the stage, because that's the other part. It's like, creating an act is tough, and then perfecting it in your own mind is tough. Then finding a place to put it on stage can be its own journey, and with a lot of performing arts, but burlesque specifically is, people often create this amazing act that they love, where I shear a lamb to the music of Postmodern Jukebox, to a song that was originally written by Nirvana, and how will I have something that is so we? Every burlesque show can use an act like that. It requires the MC to weave a storyline that makes the journey on stage from performance to performance smooth, timeless, and seamless. So I think finding an act that you really like creates that change in yourself, which almost creates a universal woo-woo force field effect of creating change before you even get to the stage. Burlesque has brought so much incredible awareness and change to a lot of different topics that I feel like we've almost cornered the market on, hey, we're doing this, but we're also doing that. It's that prestidigitation, that sleight of hand that magicians use. It's very much a, hey, look at this. Also, did you notice this little thing over here? It's a fascinating way of using our art and our bodies, much in a way that society doesn't approve. So by taking that thing that has been taboo, that has been regulated, that has been prohibited, and using it for our own sense of change, I think it's incredibly powerful. And I do feel like that we change people's lives in a lot of ways whether it's, I've had people be, well, you know what, that didn't turn me on, and but I found it incredibly fascinating to watch someone move in that fashion. I've had people tell me that, you know, it wasn't for me, but now I understand why it's different and why it's important, which I'm thankful for. That just having the opportunity to change somebody's mind is the change that we should start with, and then change their mind about a topic, a subject, of whatever.
So, two more questions. What are the challenges facing burlesque today?
Oh, social media. Primarily, it's the. I am very thankful that I don't have to do a ton of promotion due to the longevity and search engine and all that kind of stuff, because I can't get an ad approved most of the time. You know, it's the free the nipple has been a thing forever, because how do you define what's the difference between nudity and what is art, and how do we promote things that include nudity and art? And it's exhausting, and there's tons of talk about, oh well, let's create our own social network, let's create our own platform, let's create our own. It's technologically not quite feasible, nor is the ability to sway the minds of. I mean, it's been 3.5 years since I worked for Kroger. At that point, Facebook had 400 million active daily users. Like, it's not that it couldn't be done, but that's the difficult spot that we lie in, is that we have difficulty with Instagram, we have difficulty with Facebook. It's figuring out how to reach people in a way that isn't regulated, isn't prohibited, but also it's one of the difficulties in being artistic is that artistic and intrinsically technically minded is not necessarily a great crossover. I'm fortunate enough that I've been a nerd longer than I've been artistic, so I can usually figure out, okay, well, if a Facebook ad isn't going to work, then maybe I could do it this or I could do it that. And I think that's a struggle that a lot of burlesque performers and producers have, is that how do you reach your audience in a constantly changing? Just when burlesque performers started using Snapchat, then it dropped its share by considerably, and then people started using Vine, and then Vine closed, and now it's TikTok. And when I'm teaching the technology portion of class, I talk about here's what you do in your next steps. It's, well, here's how you create a Gmail account, and here's how you tie your Gmail account to your other Gmail account. So in case one gets shut down, you have the opportunity. How do you create a Facebook account using your name, which isn't your name? So here's how you create a Facebook page, and your Instagram, and your Twitter, and your TikTok, and then which platform do you use for accepting payment from producers? Because some of them will take Sesta Fosta and freeze your money, and it's a constant struggle in not only figuring out how to navigate the societal aspect, but figure out how to navigate the technology, how to figure out where the twain shall meet, and then also in a socio-political environment, talking to our friends and family, whether of choice or by blood, it becomes a new struggle. For years we used to talk about burlesque in the scope of Gypsy Rose Lee or the movie Gypsy, or then we had to tell everybody it's not like burlesque the movie with Cher Christina Aguilera, because that movie could have been called Cotton Candy because it had no burlesque in it. And then now, I guess our most recent is explaining, well, then it was Dita Von Teese, who is a whole other topic, who harkens back to all of our previous conversations around cultural appropriation and explaining that what we do is not like that. Most recently, there have been a slew of RuPaul's Drag Race alum who do burlesque style acts. So as that zeitgeist has grown, as that fandom has grown, we've had to kind of explain, well, that's not exactly what we're doing either. It's fascinating that the word burlesque, which comes from the Italian burle, which means to parody or to be satirical, and used to be applied to so many different things, and then it became to mean one thing, and now people are starting to use burlesque in a broader term. I mean, language evolves, and it cycling back to its original form, where saying that something is a burlesque of something else is another way of saying it's a satirical take on. it's a sardonical look of. So it's fascinating to me that when we're explaining burlesque and what it is, that's a struggle all on its own in defining what it is. I think what's also kind of a struggle is choosing with which audience to use the word burlesque or to use the word striptease. Because burlesque to a lot of people means can and striptease means showgirls. So figuring out the right way to talk to whom, if I'm working with a local print media, I will often use the word striptease because that will draw the eye over the word burlesque, which a lot of people still somehow don't quite know what it is. Or even when I say striptease, it's the art of tease through movement in live theater on stage. And because burlesque doesn't have to mean that the striptease portion could not have strip in it, because some burlesque has no clothing removal. It is a movement on stage that teases an idea. So the struggle becomes often just identifying how to define what we're doing. So there's a lot of elements there. I think our primary struggle at the moment is reach. Like, how do we reach people, either through technology, or how do we reach the right people that will make the most sense for us to continue to grow our community? That's probably our biggest struggle at the moment.
Yeah. Well, you may have already touched on this, but the final question is, what do you wish the general public would understand about burlesque?
There's quite a few layers to that, in that Portland is so unique in that we have no blue law, so there are no nudity regulations. Unlike our sister stripper city of Seattle, where you must have pasties on regardless of gender presentation, and also if you're within 10 feet of someone who is consuming alcohol they purchase in the venue, you have to be that distance away from them. We have none of that. So getting people to understand the difference between burlesque in different cities, it would be a great thing to accomplish. It would just be so difficult, much in the same way it's a different driver's test in Oregon, Kentucky, and California. Those things are so different. I think understanding intention and why we get on stage would be, if I could blink my eyes and make a wish, it would be get people to understand that there's nothing. Rarely is there ever something sexy to the person other than them feeling sexy. We are rarely ever on stage to make someone feel that we are sexy. We do it for ourselves. We do it for a cause or a story, whether that cause or that story is just I want to feel sexy. Getting people to understand the reasons behind, I think, would be that, but that's also like, there are so many reasons that it would be difficult to dissect from person to person, from performance to performance, but understanding that it is not meant to be often to piss somebody off. It's not meant to be the act of rebellion that they see. We're rebelling, but not because we're taking our clothes off, because we're saying that we can do it and we will do it regardless of what society might think. And I think also understanding the reasons behind why so many people continue to do it. Getting on stage and doing something one time is making a statement, but getting on stage and doing it multiple times is making a voice heard. So that, I think, it was something that would be really fascinating to figure out. So I don't know, I don't have the answer. To figure out how to articulate that to the community at large, to the world at large, that burlesque is performative, it's transformative, and it's an experience for the audience, the producer, the MC, and the performer. And getting people to understand that. I give away tickets to my shows all the time, so that it could be whatever you think it is, why don't you not think of that and come to the show and see if you were right, see how you feel, see how it changes things. I think really getting people to understand, to put their preconceived notion and or prejudice aside would be fascinating if we could figure out that snap, that way to do it. I'm hoping someday I hope to continue on my journey of producing burlesque and creating a safe curated space on stage for creative folks to come and bring their art, and through that reaching new people, and hopefully I will continue to go on the path of helping people understand just how important burlesque is, especially in this socio-political climate. And that's my story.
Great. Thank you.
My pleasure.